All
Start over, Brian, start over.
right, starting over. No, I'm not starting over. It's like asking for a relaunch. You know, we already dropped the first stage, baby. So to the process of hearing all the voices, put your information into the chat. I've got a new landing page that has my LinkedIn contact and my email on it, and so I'm going to put that in the chat. But it's a great opportunity to connect with other people that share the high values that we share here at the Charitable Roundtable. And like I said, doing good anywhere does good everywhere. So we'll have a chance to hear from each of you. At the end of the meeting, what your key takeaway is, what's been created for you, and what that inspires you to commit to going forward. So, I wonder, Mary, what do you think? Would you like to go around the screen here and have everyone just say hello, introduce themselves, 30 seconds or so?
I think we can. The people that are nonprofits, if you represent a nonprofit or work with a nonprofit, if you can raise your digital hand, so that way we can call on you, because there are friends of the roundtable as well. Can we do it that way? So if you on the board or anything like that, nonprofits, right? Be proud.
You can raise a digit.
Or yeah, if you don't know how to raise your digital hand, you can just raise your hands. It's fine. Okay. Do you see them, Brian?
I do.
Okay. People are moving around. All right.
Yes.
How about we start with Beth Dana?
Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm Beth Dana, and my nonprofit is Wealth Living. We're an organization designed to create leaders through healing and learning new ways of conscious living. And we focus on corporate wellness and social impact and change.
Right. Well said, Dana. Or Beth. Beth Dana. Yes.
Yeah, Beth
Thanks,
Dana.
Brian.
Beth Dana. Dana. Okay.
Next, Phil Fowell.
Hey, it's actually Fell. So one of those strange German names, but Phil Fell here with International Relationships. Hey, we're celebrating 45 years of making the world feel at home. Started at OSU, now in 45 campuses in 14 states. We just make the world feel at home, helping connect international students far from home with people who can help them succeed while they're studying abroad. So we work primarily with churches and Christians to provide a safe network for them. So last year we served over 2,000 internationals from 100 different countries here in Central Ohio.
Wow, that is awesome. How about you go next, MJ?
Okay, I'm MJ McCleskey. I'm from Community Kitchen, Inc. I'm the executive director here, and we basically are a small soup kitchen here in Columbus, Ohio. Last year, we served over 150,000 meals to people in the community. We just tried to go out. We have several models that we're working with where we have a brick and mortar place, and we do delivery to certain areas and organizations that we help throughout the community, like Fresh Market for All People, so we provide them with sack lunches, but we do have hot breakfast and lunch here at Community Kitchen Inc.'s location.
Wonderful. Next up is Ellen Bolsing.
You got it, actually. Thank you. Hi, I'm Ellen Bosing. I work for Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio. So we are obviously focused on sexual and reproductive rights. I recently joined, so I am joining today to just kind of learn more.
Wonderful. Welcome. Next, we have Cicely Victor.
Hi, everybody. I'm with CPL, that is Center for Purposeful Leadership. And we do a lot of programs on training in the art of convening. And we also encourage people to join our program so that they can become purposeful leaders, which is what is needed now. And the art of convening is pretty much what Brian was suggesting at the beginning of the meeting about honoring, respecting each other and listening well and things like that. So we are all conveners in that group there. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Welcome. And we have Marcy Levely.
Not bad. Marcy Lovely. Hi, nice to meet everyone. I am the Director of Development at Local Matters. We are focused on building healthier communities through food education, access, and advocacy since we've been around since 2008. And in 2023, we're able to serve 20,000 people with food education and access, such as our programs include education in nutrition education in elementary schools, as well as we have a veggie van that we drive around Columbus to provide fresh produce in neighborhoods that don't have access to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And next we have Indu Subramaniam.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Indu here. I'm from Indiana. So I represent I2 Donate. We are a organization that works with nonprofit, for all nonprofits. And we actually provide a SaaS platform where nonprofits can kind of find a way to connect very closely with their donors. So our platform gives a way for marketing and events and programs. It helps with, fundraising. It helps with volunteer, registration. So it's a pretty comprehensive platform that is specially catered for the nonprofit organizations. So if anyone would be interested, please do get in touch with me. We are also looking for people who will join our board. And so that is another thing that we are also reaching out to.
Thank you, Indu. Please remember everyone to put your contact information, name and contact information in the chat, and I will introduce myself. My name is Mary Jenkins, and I am the founder of Cancer Option Collaborative, which connects people that are in active treatment to resources to help them succeed on their road to recovery by offering emotional support, financial assistance, and we give awareness to the entire world about where money does and does not go. And so with that, I will turn it back to Brian for the next part.
Wow.
Time out. We have late attendees, so I at least saw Scott Hartman sneak into the room. Scott, you need to introduce yourself. Any other nonprofits who have not yet introduced yourselves, we'd like you to speak up. But Scott, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry for being late. Thanks for having me. Scott Hartman. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer at the Catholic Foundation here in Columbus. I've been here for 18 years, how time flies, and honored to know our presenter today, Jim Bishop, a good man and a wealth of knowledge. So looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else representing a nonprofit organization here today? All right. Thank you. One of the things that I find is one of the most important aspects for me as an MC is to get names right. And Mary, you guys don't need me anymore, man. You did a great job getting names right. People that you hadn't met before. That's pretty dang good. Good job, Mary Jenkins. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Jenkins. And so I'll turn it back to Mary for introductions, and Mary usually has something to say, and maybe something about Frank, and then if you want to introduce Jim.
Hey, well, I'll let Frank introduce Jim, but I have the pleasure of introducing Frank. I'm not going to get emotional. Anyone that knows me knows that I am a crier. I get very, very emotional when I had the privilege of meeting people that do incredible things. And Frank Agan is one of those people. He is someone that if you have not had the chance to have a conversation with, to have him speak into your life, to have him make a recommendation, you are missing out, because he is a wealth of information. He is also the person that had the vision of bringing together nonprofits. And by doing that, it made it possible for us to be here today. So I would like to present to some and introduce to others the one and only Mr. Frank Agan.
Yeah. I don't know how to follow that. I appreciate it. And we were having this conversation before. I do appreciate it. Just a little background on the Charitable Roundtable. Towards the end of 2014, I was my kids are kind of moving through high school, moving through school, going off to college, and a lot of what I did with respect to being involved in the community revolved around them. They didn't need me going off to college and volunteering at their colleges. They wanted me to leave them alone. So I'm trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I just decided, you know, one thing I'm really good at is connecting people. I have a business that connects business people to other business people and clients. And I said, wouldn't it be neat to try that same sort of concept for not-for-profits? And so it was January 2015. I invited in a couple people that I knew that had not-for-profits. And we met at a little restaurant. There was probably 4 or 5 of us, and just had a conversation. You know, I said, I know what everybody's number one problem is money. And I don't expect anybody to give up their donors. But let's have a conversation about all the other problems. And we had a great conversation and decided to continue on doing it. So once a month, we were committed to having this gathering. It was in person until COVID hit, and then it moved online. And that was, to me, it was kind of devastating, because it's like, what's going to become of this? And in the end, it's really been better, because we can connect with people literally all around the country, on up into North America, and we've had people from the UK come in as well. But one of the people who was there at that very, very first meeting was Jim Bishop. And I was always very impressed with Jim. He's a financial advisor. He's with Morgan Stanley, and he's been with Morgan Stanley forever. And you don't hang out at a place like that without a great deal of success. But as I got to know Jim over the years, I realized just how many people he touched in the not-for-profit space, and probably volunteered to a fault. He'll tell you. But I know he's a blessing to many. And we started talking about various topics that we wanted to bring to the not-for-profit space. And we started down a couple of paths. A couple of months ago, we talked about what I call forever money. Jerry Brown helped us with that, just creating endowments. And a follow-up on that is really talk about planned giving. You know, you have donors out there that have money, and you hit them up for the here and now, but they also have monies that they love you now. They might not be alive later, but they have money, and they can start to think about you. So I won't steal Jim's thunder. I'll let Jim take it from there.
Well, yeah, get a little humble here. I just hate to tell you that I was actually having lunch at that restaurant, and you all just came in. So and you just sat down at my table. I didn't plan to be there.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I'm
kidding.
Jim, I'm going to spotlight you for your presentation so everybody can see you and your screen.
Perfect. Good.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, Jody. Good to see you. Anyway, Frank knows that for me to be able to present, I need to find something that Morgan Stanley compliance is already pretty good, comfortable with. And so I'm going to use a Morgan Stanley presentation for this, just like Jerry used the CNC one, because it keeps us from not getting terminated for doing these, but we really want to do them. And I'll speed some up and go off script, but let me tell you first a little about myself. So, Jim Bishop. I live in Dublin, Ohio. For the most part, I lived here practically my whole life. Spent a few years in Tucson, Arizona. I have a couple of designations. One is a retirement income certified professional, but I also have credentials in retirement plans. I'm even a divorce specialist. So let's not hopefully get into that one. And for those who came on late, please do share your information in chat. But as far as asking questions, and I don't mind questions, but we probably should save them to the end. But Morgan Stanley turns off chat for me. So I'm not going to see your chat. So I'm going to ask Frank or somebody to give me a copy of them after the fact. But Frank, perhaps if you see something come up in chat that needs to be discussed, or Mary, just interrupt me and we'll do that. But we already talked before everybody got on, so I wanted to add my own levity in here and share with you your first, and it's not going to be your first Super Bowl commercial of today. So
Jim, did you share your sound? Did we lose Jim? No.
So I just felt like I had to do something a little more interesting. That it was going to be walk-on music that I wanted to play. So anyway, I'm going to jump right into the presentation, and we will go from here. Well, this is great because I'm now not seeing the screen, but you are seeing Giving with Impact?
Yes.
Oh, great. All right. And I wasn't hearing you either. So, okay. Well, regardless, then we're going to be fine. So, again, Morgan Stanley presentation, I will see through anything that says why you should do business with Morgan Stanley. That's not the intent today. So this is a presentation really aligned to the idea of giving it to a room full of people who might be charitably inclined. There's a tilt on it. However, some of that really has to do with how you should be talking to those people you want to be your philanthropic partners. And so we're going to talk about some of these things in that light, because I firmly believe, and any client of mine has heard from me, that I want them to invest in their values, meaning I don't want them to have investments in their portfolio that represent things they don't believe in. And I think philanthropy for clients who are capable is something that gives more meaning, more value to the wealth that they have developed. A lifetime of earnings that created whatever it is they have today, that is what, honestly, you would all like to have in your offer. So from a client standpoint, as I said, it's part of healthy living. Engaging in philanthropy gives people purpose. This might be retirement, but for those of us in this room, student service is something that's important to us. It's part of our responsibility to the universe that we live in. In 2022, Americans gave nearly $500 billion to charity. about 64% of that came from individual donations. And in 2022, 86% of affluent households maintained or increased their giving despite of uncertainty still about COVID. So, my speech to people is this is going to be one of the most meaningful aspects of your life, especially tied to issues, values, and causes that are important to you and your family, which also can be part of how do you instill your values to your children. This can be part of that. So the benefits of charitable giving extend far beyond the money that people are giving. It is a much smaller conversation to talk about potential savings, or tax savings, but it's becoming now, perhaps in the new year, a bigger conversation from an estate planning. And we're not going to get deep into that. We're going to talk a little more, we're going to focus a little more on the house. But I think it's important that if you don't understand that when a business that has been in the family for 2 generations, meaning dad started the business, excuse me for the sexism, but chances are dad started the business and gives it to his children. And the children are at the point where their children don't want to be in the business. Statistically, that's true. So they go to sell the business. The business valuation is likely the business cost basis is likely very small. They have a massive taxable event coming on into their lives. They have a potentially a large tax influx, but they also have a tax issue. And some of what we're going to talk about here can help people even deal with that. So I don't want to get too deep into the part of this that's finding your passion. However, when you're sitting down with a potential donor, you need to know what their passion is. You need to have had conversations with them about what it is. What do they see? Do they see things as their legacy? Do they, what is important to them? Because that needs to be part of your conversation. Now, you all probably should know this. Public charities are organizations that are defined simply as public charities by virtue of what it is they do, such as a religious establishment, a hospital, or a school, or because it passes one of the 3 tests that ensure it receives broad-based public or governmental support, or because of its relationship and support of another public charity. And the difference there is versus a foundation. A foundation is going to be a private, typically family-oriented charity. And for some of you, you should be considering our private foundations part of something that it should be in your universe as far as places you might consider looking for funding. 2 things I need to say. One, I'm not an accountant. The other is I'm not an attorney. And I don't know if we have any attorneys actually on the call, but at least one I noticed had signed up, and I don't know if they actually joined. I will not go into tax advice. If I mention something that sounds like tax advice, it's an opinion. Frank, help me out here if I'm gonna, all the disclaimers of this. And there are also items that need attorneys to actually create these planned giving vehicles, which again, I'm not giving you legal advice about that. But here really is the heart of what we're here to talk about today. And planned giving tools. Now, planned giving, and I know Scott Hartman would have perhaps a mildly different list than this with being part of the Catholic Foundation. Because you might include life insurance, you might include other vehicles. Planned giving means that it's something that was considered in advance. And it is a, excuse me, whether you're using these tools or not, a gift left in a will is also still a planned gift. And your ability to help people make these decisions about you becoming part of their legacy aren't going to necessarily help you today, and they may not be part of your sustainability, but it is certainly something you should consider, meaning don't put these away. They can be a big surprise. So the list of them, we're going to talk about charitable distributions, simple gifts, direct lifetime donations, charitable bequest, charitable remainder trust, charitable lead trust, donor advised fund. I think something that needs to have focus. You have to understand what they are. Private foundations, charitable gift annuities, and pooled income funds. I'm not going to say there aren't others, but these are the ones that we're going to talk about today. So direct lifetime donations. Here's some good news. And that's my point is, if you're gifting your wealth, your money to your family, to your children, there are some limitations in your lifetime, and the IRS changes those, and we're going through that right now. You can give everything to a 501c3, and there is no limit on it. It's very simple, and this says there are no fees and costs. There are times when you might give a building to a charity, and that charity says thank you, but you as the donor with that property are responsible for having the valuation done for it. There are times when people have given charities their house, and that house then is transferred based on a valuation that somebody gave it. The charity turns around and sells it, and it may or may not be anywhere near the valuation given. It doesn't matter to the donor, who otherwise might be upset that you actually paid a commission to a salesperson, to a realtor and whatnot, and you didn't get the valuation for it. That's not the important part. The important part is that they gave you an asset that helped them out tremendously. Now, before you go out and start advertising that you take gifts of houses, remember that at the moment somebody gives you this house, you are now legally responsible for everything that goes on in that house. You need to call Jeff Cashman. You need to get insurance for it. And your liabilities just start piling up really, really fast. Be careful before you take a house. If you donate a car to one of these things on TV, they, as I understand it, actually do give, your deduction is based on what they sell it for, and they're going to sell it probably in auction. So it's just interesting. Different gifts do have some different rules. You are the one who's responsible for knowing that. You need to give guidance to the people who are giving you gifts. And there are plenty of resources in this circle who can help you give good guidance. So we talked about the direct gift, and now we're talking about the bequest. These are end-of-life gifts. Same thing. You can encourage somebody. I'm sticking into the house conversation. They have no family, and maybe they would be very, very well, maybe they have family and maybe they don't like them. You can definitely ask people to think of you in their will and to leave you a gift of various different kinds of assets. And this is an unlimited in terms of what these assets are. Said too with the other gifts, stocks are the most common. We talked about taxes and things. If I give my Microsoft stock that I bought in 1985, 95% of the value, probably 98% of the value of that stock is capital gain trust. And so when I give it to the charity owes no taxes on it. I get a charitable gift for the value of it based on the day I gave it to the charity. So, you know, again, stocks are so inflated. This is another thing that you can be asking people for. Now we're talking about a charitable remainder trust. And I said, I'm going to limit some of what I'm going to say on some of these because I don't want to get into the legal aspect specifically, but a charitable remainder trust is certainly the most complex thing we've talked about today. The giving vehicle with cash or property, and I'm not going to use the word donated, it's transferred to an irrevocable trust, either during the donor's life or at the donor's death. The trust can make payments to the donor and or the donor's beneficiaries via a contract, which is detailed out in the trust for the duration of their lives or for a specified term, and we state not more than 20 years. Talk to an attorney, talk to somebody from a foundation, and they will give you the specifics. The trustee sells the appreciated assets and avoids immediate capital gains, meaning the donor has offset his capital gains. He sells them at full market value and reinvests the proceeds, and this is the Morgan Stanley line, in a diversified income producing assets to grow tax deferred. How they invest it is not up to the donor, it is up to the charity. And the amount of the annual payment in this case is either going to be fixed as a percentage of the initial value, or it can be variable based on the valuation of the trust assets each year. In either case, the minimum payment is 5%. At the end of the payment term, the remaining trust assets are then donated to the charity. So what we're doing here is we're creating an income stream for a donor from the charity where they are able to give their gift to the charity and receive income in their lifetime for it. It can be a very, very powerful tool. It is complex. Don't go into this alone. Now, where are we? We're at the charitable leave trust. I hope I haven't put everybody to sleep.
I'm here for it.
Go on, screen.
There you go.
We're good? All right.
Yep.
So similar to the charitable remainder trust, different though, a charitable leave trust involves moving cash or property again to an irrevocable trust. But in this case, the charitable leave trust, the payments are made to the charity or charities for the life of the donor and for the, and or non-charitable beneficiaries of the trust for a specific period of time. The amount of the annual payment can be either, again, fixed or variable based on the value of the trust. At the end of the payment term, the remaining trust assets are then distributed to the donor and or non-charitable beneficiaries of the trust. What I've done here is I have given an income stream to the charity that I care about. I did not cut off my beneficiaries from the values of the asset itself. I have not managed those assets either. To me, this is fairly, perhaps one of the more complex, and it has legal fees to create a trust. You need trustee, you need management, you need preparation, and you need tax preparation fees for it. You have the right client for this, good for you. The trust does allow the grantor to determine at the time the trust is created the payment method, the trust terms, and the beneficiaries. And finally, the trust can reduce the grantor's taxable estate, potentially reducing federal estate tax liability. However, charitable lead trusts are irrevocable commitments. So once you have created it, you can't stop it. And they require that the charitable payment is going to be made whether or not there are any assets left in the trust. That can be potentially an issue. Now, here's one of my favorites, the donor advised fund. And I don't know if this is still true, but several years ago, I'm going to say maybe 18 or 19, the largest charitable organization in the country, if not the world, I believe, was Fidelity's donor advised fund. And what a donor advised fund is, in general, is a fund maintained by a public charity over which the donor is allowed to provide ongoing advice regarding the distribution of the assets to the ultimate charitable beneficiary, and perhaps how the assets are to be invested by the charity. Don't count on that last part of that. It is a complete gift, and the idea of donor advised gives the idea to many people that they have a certain amount of control over their fund. What they have control over is where the funds are distributed. And I say control, they are allowed to recommend to the charity who manages the donor advised fund for them how that money is distributed. And the charity is inclined, because this is the nature of donor advised funds, to follow that advice. So I'm going to get into some other details here, but in addition to providing easy and flexible vehicles for charitable giving, donor advised funds can serve as convenient alternatives for donors who do not wish to make direct grants to charity or form a private foundation. Donor advised funds can also produce several tax advantages. Assets contributed to a donor advised fund may qualify for immediate tax charitable deduction. The earnings in the account are not subject to income tax. The assets transferred to the donor advised fund are outside of being, stop them from realizing capital gains. Assets held in the fund are managed by professionals, and though there may be some administration and investment management fees, there is no tax reporting or anything else on the donor. Why I think donor advised funds are great are this. Remember, I said, I don't really think that I can recommend to you that you want to have a house donated to your charity. I mean, Mary, it would be overwhelming to you if that happened. You'd be on your knees thanking God, but you would also hopefully be thinking a little bit, going, okay, what do I do next? By working with a donor advised fund, many donor advised funds are able to actually receive a gift like a house, like collectible art, gold. It goes on. But also, the person who says, I want to give 20% of the proceeds of the sale of my business to your charity can give the donor advised fund 20% of the stock ownership of his company, and that 20% of his ownership is not taxed with capital gain, which means that the amount of funds that when the sale closes means you get more money from the donation. and his total tax bill is less. And I'm hoping that makes some sense, but it is a huge, huge thing. There are many, many people who you know who may have donor advised funds. The three I'm going to, well, I'm going to say four because I already said Fidelity before. But here in Columbus, what I think the three prominent ones are, obviously the Columbus Foundation. They run donor advised funds. The Catholic Foundation, Scott Hartman is on here. I am confident the Jewish Foundation has theirs. You will find them under all sorts of community charities that run donor advised funds. But I will say this for the Catholic Foundation, they will open a donor advised fund for $1. And Scott, if you're saying no, that doesn't happen anymore, I can't see you. So anyway, that is unique because, as our screen says here, initial cost typically $25,000. Morgan Stanley says that on their presentation because that's the Morgan Stanley minimum for opening a donor advised fund. But you need to look at the details of the donor advised fund, because I will also say, if there's social enterprises on here that are not 501c3s, a Morgan Stanley donor advised fund is able to give you funding. In many cases, I believe the Catholic and the Jewish Foundation will consider it. But the Columbus Foundation will only give to a 501c3. So the donor needs to know that I want my money in my donor advised fund to be given for good. But it doesn't, you really should just cover what your thoughts are with the people before they get into it. But you could find partnerships with finding out who has donor advised funds of their own, and potentially you can give donors to you through those donor advised funds. Why is so much money being accumulated in donor advised funds? I get a donation tax credit for it now, but there are many organizations that they have the annual gala and they celebrate. I'm being a little sarcastic here. And they keep inviting their donors to the big gala every year. Well, you can't use your donor advised fund to buy tickets to the gala, but they can invite you if they choose for free. And some people like to stretch out their giving over longer periods of time. Sometimes people don't know what they want to do with their money, but at least they get their tax deduction now. So put donor advised fund onto some of your marketing and ask your people in your marketing, do you have a donor advised fund? Would you be willing to share some of your already tax deferred, tax deducted contribution, with us? So keep that as in your vocabulary. Very, very important. I don't want to get into private foundations at this point in time, because you're not going to be consulting somebody to join a private, to create a private foundation. Private foundations do have different sets of rules. They are obligated to give away money every year. They are a different animal. So for the purposes of this call, I would not say they are they're a tool in your toolbox, your tool belt. So I think we're coming to the last two, and then we got the charitable gift annuity. Not everybody wants to get into the charitable gift annuity. But the charitable gift annuity, again, cash property donated during the donor's life to a public nonprofit organization or community foundation in exchange for the charity's promise to make a fixed lifetime payment, at least annually, to the donor and or other individuals. Generally, the payment amount conforms to a prescribed table mortality table, that measures payment on the recipient's life expectancy, and upon the death of the payment recipient, the charity then keeps any remaining assets, similar to something we've already talked about before. Charitable gift annuity is fixed payments, gives you the potential to defer capital gains, donating the appreciated assets, reduction of the donor's estate. The disadvantage of this vehicle is some of the complexity involved in setup. And again, I believe a guaranteed income to the recipient. There are more tax on the income to the recipient in this, I believe, is taxable. Ask the CPA for confirmation about it. Something that can be considered but is not highly likely, and that is the pooled income fund. And then we're just about going to be wrapped up. Frank, how are we on time? When did you want me to finish?
I'm looking at the time right now. Am I muted? No.
No.
We're about 25 past the hour. We're good. We'll have, 20, 25 minutes for questions.
Okay. Very good. Because I tried to go fast on this, and I think everybody kind of enjoys getting out of these a little bit early. But the pooled income fund is cash or property donated by separate donors, commingled into a single fund for investment purposes. Every donor receives a proportionate share of the new income earned by the fund each year. Upon each donor's death, the charity keeps the remaining assets from the donor share of the fund. Unlike the charitable gift annuity, where payments are paid to donor are fixed, payments in this are variable. You would hire a professional money manager, wealth manager, who would be the one who is making distributions of your funds. Pooled income funds are not new and are actually being done in the social enterprise world, I believe, in a very strong way. There are millennials that I think feel that this makes a really smart way to support the charities and things that they believe in. I have not seen much of this around here at all. So of course, again, this is for the donors. So of course we talk to them about getting volunteering with your organization, being a leader. I will say this: if you get somebody who's really, really interested in what they're doing, get them involved in your organization. I think it's a great way to keep them engaged in a way that they are much more likely to think of you philanthropically. The only thing I'm going to say about making it a team effort, if these are conversations that you think you have people to have, don't do it alone. You only get one good shot at these things. I do this, as Frank knows, broader. I mean, if they happen to become a client, great. My meeting with anybody that is referred to me is not about me gaining a client. It's about me doing what I am called to do, what I am responsible to be doing in the community and world that I live in. So I am always happy to help. But there are times, as I said, you need attorneys, you need other people involved. You can't go and make commitments to people about some of these things. And you know what, Frank? I think I'm just going to wrap up there, unless you want me to read 3 pages of disclosure.
Oh, let's not do that. I'll unpin you here. I guess we'll open it up for questions. I guess I will throw out just kind of that tail end there. I used to be an attorney. I used to be a tax consultant. I have a CPA. I don't really understand these things. I shouldn't say I don't understand them. I would need help, right? This is very complicated. I think when you guys talk to your donors, I think I guess what I'm saying is don't necessarily attempt to talk to your donors. All you need to do, and I see a lot of not-for-profits doing this, is just say, we have options available.
Yeah.
You talk to Jim on the front end, just so you're kind of, enough to be dangerous, and just let people know we have options. And then you kind of go from there. And you let people know, and everybody's situation is going to be different. And depending upon their situation, then you can determine what bucket that they would, well, not what bucket, but how they would take advantage of this. It could be, whatever. There's just a bunch of stuff here, but you start letting people know, and people can start putting things into their will. I want to designate this amount of money going towards this, donor advised fund or whatever it is. So, I know when my mom passed 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, she had in her will, there was she was up in Minneapolis, there was an organization that was very instrumental in helping her start a business. And she wanted to set up a scholarship or set up a fund there. So and once you figure it out, you can figure out other stuff. Anyhow, I'll shut up, let people ask questions.
Jim, you mentioned the donor advised fund. For those of you that are nonprofit affiliated, especially in Central Ohio, being part of the Columbus Foundation is so important. They have a lot of resources to be able to help you to make certain that you're in position. And the beautiful thing about the Columbus Foundation is they will just refer you to different foundations that they identify that you can meet their criteria. We were one of the first, I want to say the first 800 approved charities of when they had the charity portraits. I heard about it and I was like, we got to be one. I don't know how to be one, but I'm figured out. And so we've been one for years, and I've noticed that a lot of nonprofits are not connected to the Columbus Foundation, and that's something. But Jim, you also mentioned the Fidelity Foundation, so I'm like, I need to pick Jim's brain, because there's probably some funds out there that we are eligible for that we have not even tapped into out of not knowing.
So I would assume every financial institution, I'm going to make a broad statement. Every major financial institution probably has its charitable arm. We have a private foundation. We also have a community foundation, and ours is called GIFT. Morgan Stanley does. Fidelity has obviously one, which runs their donor advised fund. I am confident that you will find many of the Schwabs and others that these things exist at all of those. And yet, here's the thing about a donor advised fund versus your foundation. There is no public record of it. It is completely private. You are offline. You're off, it's off the grid. And so only the charity's marketing of that. So, the fact that you get a direct referral from somebody through the Columbus Foundation about, hey, you guys should talk, is them doing what I think is their job. And it's not something you can do a lot of research about. What you do need to do is include in the subtle marketing pieces that we are happy to. What are you doing with your donor advised fund? Because I'll tell you this too, it could be sitting there doing nothing. They're under no obligation to give money from their donor advised fund. So you definitely just want to be aware. It has to be in your vernacular. You have to be able to discuss the donor advised fund. But you're right, Mary. It's not the giving store anymore. I think they changed the name, but you can hunt a little bit at the Columbus Foundation.
And we started getting quarterly checks from Charles Schwab, and I was like, "Who is this?" And I reached out to them and I started asking questions because I didn't know where the donation came from. I just knew it was from somebody within the fund. And we ended up finding out who it was. And it was somebody that I had met probably 15 years ago, that had wanted to figure out a way so that they could always donate to the organization. And they finally figured it out. And so
the three things that I think you need to, pay attention to or kind of market for. And one is, as I said, the donor advised fund. I've already forgot number 3. 2, though, actually is life insurance. We still have a culture of people whose parents may have bought them a whole life insurance policy when they were 12, and it is sat in a drawer on with a certificate growing in value that they don't need. If they needed it, they would have sold it. These can be gifts to you as well. You don't have to wait for them to pass. You might want to hold it until they pass, but you certainly, when you're talking to somebody who's older, you might ask them if they have life insurance and if it's part of their estate plan, to see where the conversation goes. And as I said, there were RMDs. Every fall, you should be, including in your discussion points, what are you doing with your required minimum distribution from your IRA? Because they can give that money directly to a 501c3, not to a donor advised fund, but they can give it to a 501c3 directly without ever taking it in as income. And that is that opportunity to not take it as income and then deduct it can be very meaningful to the executive who has a $2 million IRA, which is potentially, possible. So anyway, RMDs are important. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, next month, we're going to really center in on RMDs and things along those lines, FYI.
Okay.
But I wanted
Come next month.
No, yeah, great tease. But I wanted to make mention of the notion of a house or asset that someone might want to contribute to, because this has come up in other roundtables we've had. There are auctioneers out there. So let's say somebody comes to you and says, "I've got this house, it's mom's house," and this is a true story from my parents up in northern Michigan. The parents are getting older. Son moves home. It's a crack house. It's got value, but it needs work, right? And you as a not-for-profit, somebody says, "Hey, Mom really liked what you did. We want to give this to you." You might say, "No way, hell no, I don't want the crack house." You can find an auctioneer who can stand in the middle and, before you take title to it, sell it and then get you the monies, and then you can set up whatever sort of fund or whatnot. So, if there's that asset out there, and the story that this auctioneer told is somebody went to a charity and said, "Hey, we want to donate a truck to you," and the charity said, "Thanks, but no thanks." And this guy went and he sold the truck, and brought he took the check in to show the original charity, "Hey, you see this money? Would you like it?" And they said, well, sure. It's like, well, you can't have it because another charity jumped in and got me involved. So we sold the asset before they took title to it. And they're getting the money. So something to think about.
Well, I use the example of houses. We're in central Ohio with farms, and farms are another generational asset that, because somebody didn't do the estate planning properly, there's never been a step up in cost basis on this farm. And it's three generations old, and maybe it's not big, but now Intel wants it.
Yeah.
You just don't know. But if you get hold of if they start to think about this after the asset has sold, it's too late. The IRS is the first one in line. So you can't go and start recommending tax advantage giving after the fact an asset is sold. It's probably where I should have started. So these are things that need to be planned in advance. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, so one of the things that really struck home for me is that the idea of getting with business people and making this part of their business transition strategy, it really seems like a good way to go.
In an ideal world, I'd be talking to somebody who's going to sell or exit a business 6 or 7 years in advance of that happening. And it's in my world as a financial advisor, as I said, I don't have this expectation somebody becomes a client. Here's an important thing. 6 or 7 years before they transition, they don't have any investable assets. Everything's in the business. So, it's interesting how sometimes business owners are pushed off by wealth managers that, are like, well, I'm not sure I can do anything for you now. Give me a call. Well, fact is, the business owner probably won't really sit down with me that many years in advance. It's normally like 1 or 2 years out. Hey, I want to sell my business, and I'm like, well, what's the CPA say? My wife, we got to plan this. We got to make sure the ducks are in a row. And by the way, your valuation may change dramatically if we do it right. If we do it wrong, and we may leave money on the table. And maybe that's
very well
okay.
be upside down in their business, right?
But Brian, my business is my life's work. Of course it's worth, yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's very emotional.
Beth, jump in there. Come on out.
Hello. Hi, Jim. I'm actually not in the Ohio area. This is my first time here, so I'm recognizing that this is. Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's my question to you. Are you licensed in multiple states?
Yes, and it's I'm licensed usually licensed in about 20 different states. And if for some reason I'm not licensed in your state, I go online at work, and by the next morning I am licensed in your state.
Okay,
It's
great.
just a registration form, yeah.
Sure.
But if
Okay,
you look
well,
on my website, you might not see your state.
Okay, fantastic. I'll connect with you offline. We can chat later.
Beth,
Thanks,
where are
Jim.
you at?
So,
Beth, where are you at?
Well, I'm in Costa Rica, but my work is done globally. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fortunately, Morgan Stanley doesn't have a problem with that either, but we'll talk. I did not, Frank, share my contact information, and I can't chat.
Okay. What do you want in there?
So
I'll
just
put you.
my email address, maybe. James, I Google really easily with James Bishop, Morgan Stanley. You'll get to my website. but it's,
I'll punch it in there and then I'll have I'll punch it in there.
thank you.
I just have to look at it.
Yeah, for those of you still here, there is no reason to have absorbed all of these things. You just need to know they exist. That, I think, is the important thing for today.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, do you still allow basically open-ended donor advised fund for $1? No
Maybe
minimum.
one better. We actually do it for $0. Oh, clearly one
well,
better.
I don't know what the tax deduction on that is, but I could leverage that 100 times.
Well, for us, and you know, we are we are a community foundation within a faith denomination. For us, it's really a relationship tool, right? Which is why we removed the minimums. For us, it's important to get folks in and get the idea of charity and philanthropy in their hearts to use those types of funds. And you know, by having those higher minimums, we were cutting out a certain percentage of our constituent base. So we removed the minimums. It's been great. It just allows folks to give in a different way. So it's been really good for us.
And many faith organizations.
I'm sorry. That
No, Brian, go ahead.
Sounds like a good denomination.
We're biased.
Well, what it does is it opens the vehicle, and it's there then to be the receptacle. And I think it has a lot of merit as opposed to literally waiting for that first dollar or anything else. And allows it to be open so when it's needed, it's there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it.
My commentary on that is I know somebody who's one of their parents had passed, and they didn't need the money. It wasn't a ton of money, and they wanted to open a donor advised fund or something like that through an organization that the parent was really liked and was affiliated with. And the organization said, we won't do it for less than 50K. Well, they had like 35K. And so then they were kind of like, oh, now what do we do? And what they ended up doing is splitting it 3 or 4 ways or whatever it was and just spent it, right? So they had the best of intentions, but it was like they were foiled to doing really what they wanted to do for mom or dad or whatever it was. So I like the notion of, hey, let's just get it in there. And if they'd have been able to start it, then you never know down the line they would put more money in it, or I don't know, but it never went anywhere. It went to a trip to Costa Rica. I don't know what they spent their money on.
I think we could have next month's meeting in Costa Rica personally.
There we go.
Frank, you'll just start buying everybody plane tickets. I mean, you're an attorney. You make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, Jim, because Spirit Airlines has the Spirit Foundation or the Spirit Fund. And so you can actually request tickets at no cost.
There you go. Go ahead, Beth.
Okay.
Beth, did you have something to add, or are you just waving?
I was
All
just
right.
acknowledging that I liked that.
Of course.
Like every time
Well,
I traveled, I would hear it. And they're like, do you know that that Spirit Airlines has a foundation, it has a fund? And I would hear it and not think anything of it. And then I finally said, let me look into this. And I had no idea that I could request, because of being a 501c3, I can request them to cover airline ticket trips for myself if I'm working, as well as for clients, depending on what it is that they need.
All right. Well, I got nothing else, Frank. Maybe I went too fast, but as I said, I think an overview is all we intended to do. And I appreciate having the time. Beth, I look forward to talking to you.
Scott, one more thing.
Yeah, could I just add one little tip of advice maybe? And I think Jim he hit on this at one point, but from a nonprofit standpoint, I'll share with the group for those of you who are with nonprofits. When we talk about planned giving, I just shared this with somebody the other day. I said, listen, we get so busy, right? We look at, well, first off, we're busy running our organizations, but then secondly, when it comes to money and fundraising, we automatically look at those folks who have given it a higher threshold, right? And they're the ones who get the attention. From a planned giving standpoint, day in and day out, I will. The key for me has been those individuals who have been frequent and consistent givers to our organization, regardless of what that dollar amount is. So oftentimes we're only going to look at folks, we only talk to those who gave $1,000 or $5,000, or I spin that on its head, and I want to talk to the little old lady who's given me $50 for the last 20 years, right? Because she's bought into my mission. She's bought into our organization. And she is the one who ultimately will make one of those planned gifts. And we've seen that time and time again, the millionaire next door. It is so true. It's those folks who have given $50, $25, $100 a year to your mission for multiple years. They're the ones who are motivated to really do something when it comes to a planned gift. So that's my plug.
Thanks, Scott. And as a percentage of their disposable income, they're giving a much higher level of gifts to you. And that millionaire next door, realistically, wants his name on the scoreboard at Ohio State. For some reason, Scott, you're not giving naming rights to churches around Columbus.
Unless your
The
name's St. Matthew.
The Frank Agan Bell Tower,
No. St. Matthew or something like that. Yeah. St. Francis. There we go.
Yeah. And the other thing that I left out about this is, as a charity, people need to understand when they give you something, they have no right to this. You can't let them tell you how to use this gift. They give you land. They can't tell you, if they tell you that you can't sell it, then they haven't given you a gift. There's some times when somebody wants to put restrictions on it that you need to talk to an attorney. I have recommendations. I have recommendations for auctioneers. I have recommendations for attorneys who are all reasonable in this space. But there are times when you need legal advice on this stuff.
So you really need a team with this attorney, CPA, financial planner to accomplish many of these things, right, Jim?
Absolutely, and in some cases, the financial advisor is not the center of this conversation. He may or may not bring a person to the table. If they have one, it might help to include them. Unfortunately, one of the realities of financial advisors has been that I've seen is that I want to make a very significant gift to, and I don't care if it's to support my faith or my school, but this advisor is going, well, wait a second, that's money I manage. Sorry, it's not your money, and on so many different levels. I know, many of you go and I say, it's not their money either. I kind of give it up to, to others in our universe that just say, you cannot. You got to watch out for the advisor who might be trying to guide them away from it. That's all I'm saying.
That financial advisor may be more like a conductor or a quarterback for the thing, right?
Well, they can be, but they also may be biased on their own self-interest. That's my point. You've got to keep an eye on them. They might have significant things to lose, depending on the gifting. So, but that's their problem, not yours.
It's all about relationships, man.
Got to do it right.
Yep. Next month, Brian, you want to introduce next month? Mary, you can.
Next month we'll be talking about RMDs and the CARES Act, and our guests will be Brad Roschke, who's joined us today. Thanks, Brad.
Howdy, y'all. Yeah, glad to be here, Brian. I'm looking forward to seeing you this afternoon when you come in the office also.
That's right. Headed
Yeah.
to Geneva, Illinois. And
we have our agent force on hand. We are fundraising this afternoon, actually. So I'm glad you're coming in.
All right, man. Looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good time.
Thank you so much, Jim. Jim's a day one supporter of the Charitable Roundtable. Jeff Cashman, I know, is a day two supporter. I've misidentified him in the past. And good to see some new faces here today. Good to see some stalwarts along with the cohort here. And looking forward to next week or next, well, I'm looking forward to next week, Valentine's Day next week. I'm really looking forward to that, tell you what. And looking forward to next month. Second Friday every month. I did put in the chat a little bit of information about how to sign up for the Zoom call again next week, or next month, March 8th. So
Thank you, everybody.
yep. See you all.
Thank you.
And Beth,
Thank
I
you
just
so
made that
much.
connection for you. Check your email.
Got it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mary.
Take
God
care.
bless.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
All right, just us again.
And
Oh,
it's
just a
and
second.
the last in, last in, last out. Here we go.
Yeah, that was
Awesome.
good.
Good
That was
job
good.
today,
That was
man.
good.
That really perked right along, didn't it? I thought it was outstanding.
Yep.
Got me thinking, because I'm like, wait a minute, I know some people. I
And
know
we're
some
still
people that
we're still
probably have foundations.
We're still recording here, so
Okay, yeah, I'll stop
Uh-huh.
the
just so
recording.
you know, Frank Agan is